They called him the king of daytime TV. At his peak, Anthony Geary wasn't just an actor. He was a cultural phenomenon. His character, Luke Spencer, turned General Hospital into appointment television, and his on-screen romance became the most-watched soap opera moment in history. Fans followed his every move, convinced he'd always be part of their daily lives. But then, without warning, he walked away. No scandals, no public meltdowns, just a sudden disappearance from the spotlight. Whispers started. Had he retired for good? Was something going on behind the scenes? This is the story of how one of TV's biggest stars simply vanished. When Anthony Geary stepped onto the General Hospital set in 1978, it wasn't with the swagger of a future star. It was just another acting gig. The script called for Luke Spencer to be dangerous, unpredictable, and temporary. But Geary brought a charisma that producers couldn't ignore. Viewers responded almost immediately, sending letters to the network asking for more of the mysterious man from Port Charles. Then came Laura, played by Genie Francis. What started as a complicated storyline quickly snowballed into television history. Their relationship was messy, dramatic, and occasionally controversial, but audiences couldn't look away. The wedding episode in 1981 didn't just set records. It became a cultural moment, drawing more viewers than most primetime shows. Luke and Laura were suddenly everywhere, on magazine covers, in tabloids, even parodied in late-night comedy. For Geary, it was a whirlwind. He went from relative anonymity to one of the most recognizable faces on TV. But with fame came pressure. He was expected to deliver week after week, to keep Luke interesting and unpredictable, while still giving fans the romance they craved. Off-screen, he was starting to feel the weight of being Luke all the time, and that weight would only get heavier. Anthony Geary's talent wasn't just appreciated by fans, it was recognized by his peers. In 1982, he won his first Daytime Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor, a milestone that signaled he wasn't just popular, he was respected. Over the decades, he went on to win 8 in total, more than any other lead actor in daytime history. Each win reinforced his place as the gold standard for soap opera performances. But those victories came at a cost. Soap operas are a grind, 5 days a week, nearly year-round, with scripts that can run 30 to 40 pages a day. There was little room for rest, and even less for mistakes. Geary had to balance delivering consistent performances with the challenge of keeping a single character compelling for decades. Behind the scenes, there were creative debates. Geary was known for pushing for storylines that challenged Luke, even if they were risky. He didn't want the character to become stale or predictable. Sometimes those ideas made it to air, sometimes they didn't. While he was always professional, friends say he grew frustrated when he felt the show wasn't taking enough creative chances. That creative tension, combined with the relentless pace, was slowly taking its toll. By the late 80s, Geary was itching to prove himself outside the soap world. He knew the industry saw him as Luke Spencer first and an actor second. So when the opportunity came to play Philo in Weird Al Yankovic's offbeat 1989 comedy UHF, he took it. The role was bizarre, eccentric, and light years away from anything he'd done on General Hospital. Critics noticed, fans were surprised, and Geary proved he could disappear into something completely different. Other roles followed, quirky comedies, stage performances, indie films. But breaking free from the soap opera label proved harder than he expected. Casting directors often couldn't see past Luke, no matter how far he strayed from the role. Some friends believed these projects weren't just creative experiments, they were survival tactics. They allowed him to recharge, to escape the grind of soap work without leaving entirely. But they also hinted at a growing restlessness. Geary loved acting, but the box he was in was getting smaller by the year. It was becoming clear that if he wanted real freedom, it might take more than side projects. It might take walking away altogether. In May 2015, Geary made it official. After decades as Luke Spencer, he was leaving General Hospital for good. Fans were stunned. This wasn't a temporary storyline exit. It was permanent. In interviews, he thanked the cast, crew, and fans, but carefully sidestepped deeper questions about his reasons. Industry insiders had their own theories: creative fatigue, disagreements over Luke's direction, or simply a desire to live life on his own terms. His final episodes were emotional, filled with nods to the character's history. Longtime fans saw it as a fitting goodbye, even if it left them wanting more. Then in 2017, Geary appeared for a brief cameo, reigniting hopes he might return full-time. But he didn't. That cameo was a curtain call, not a comeback. Privately, he had already moved on. Friends say the decision wasn't impulsive. It had been building for years. Geary wanted a different kind of life, one free from the constant schedule and the expectations that came with being Luke Spencer. He wasn't just leaving a show, he was leaving an identity he'd carried for nearly 40 years. When the cameras stopped rolling, Geary didn't head to another set. He boarded a plane to Amsterdam. The city offered him exactly what he wanted: privacy, culture, and the ability to live without being recognized on every corner. He immersed himself in the arts, attending theater productions, visiting galleries, and even painting himself. He enjoyed the city's slower pace, often cycling through the streets or relaxing in quiet cafes. For someone who had spent decades in a relentless work schedule, the change was life-altering. In interviews, he spoke warmly about the freedom to live without a script, to make choices day by day instead of by production schedule. Occasionally, fans visiting Amsterdam would spot him, but they were often respectful, sometimes even unsure if it was really him. In this new life, Geary could simply be Anthony, not Luke, not a soap icon, just himself. And he was perfectly happy to keep it that way. In 20, Geary married his longtime partner, Claudio Gama, in a private ceremony. Their life together in Amsterdam is quiet, centered around art, travel, and their beloved cat, Max. Claudio occasionally shares glimpses of their world, a candid photo here, a sweet moment there. But for the most part, they keep their life private. In July 2025, a rare image surfaced on social media: Geary and Claudio, smiling at home, relaxed and content. It was a stark contrast to the drama-filled persona fans knew for decades. Here was a man who had walked away from fame, not in bitterness, but in search of peace, and found it. For millions who remember Luke Spencer's fiery personality, the quiet ending might seem anticlimactic, but for Geary, it's exactly the opposite. After decades of scripted chaos, he's written his own ending, one built on happiness, love, and freedom. And maybe that's the most unexpected plot twist of his career. Away from the cameras, Anthony Geary was nothing like the larger-than-life Luke Spencer. Friends describe him as thoughtful, witty, and surprisingly shy for someone who spent nearly 4 decades in front of millions. He valued privacy fiercely, so much so that many longtime fans knew very little about his personal life until after he retired. Geary was also known for his sharp mind and broad interest. He loved literature, music, and art, often traveling just to experience local culture. In interviews, he sometimes hinted that playing Luke was only one part of his identity, and that his real self was far more complex than the scripts ever showed. Perhaps that's why leaving General Hospital wasn't an ending, but a beginning. In Amsterdam, he could finally live life as Anthony, not Luke. No autographs, no media appearances, just days filled with art, conversation, and the freedom to be himself. And maybe that's the real story here. For all the drama Luke Spencer brought to television, Anthony Geary's happiest chapter is the one he's writing far from the spotlight. If you love uncovering the untold stories behind TV's biggest names, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss the next deep dive. There's always another legend, another mystery, and another twist coming your way, and you won't want to miss it.